Hey there, awesome human. So thrilled you popped into my channel. If it's your first time here, hit that subscribe button and pass this video along to your crew. It seriously makes a big difference. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from? I read every single comment like it's treasure. Let's dive in. 280 feet in the air, balanced on the razor-thin lip of a wind turbine. My entire life unraveled in the moment it took to glance at a single photograph. The message on my phone wasn't just confirmation of betrayal, it was evidence of something darker. My wife hadn't merely strayed. She and her lover were conspiring to destroy me in ways no affair alone could manage. What Fiona and the man she'd chosen didn't realize is that fear, at this altitude, transforms into focus. Up here, where a single misstep could mean plunging to your death, panic is useless. Calculation is everything. By the time I finally faced them, every move I needed to make had already been set in motion. The outcome was decided before the confrontation even began. My name is Julian Brandt. I'm 38 years old, and for the past decade I've worked as a wind turbine technician, climbing the steel spires that rise like quiet giants over the endless plains of the Midwest. It's solitary work. Days spent strapped to swaying towers, surrounded by nothing but wind and sky. But I've always welcomed that loneliness. Just me, the blades, and the steady hum of machinery. The pay isn't bad either. Good enough that 2 years ago Fiona and I bought the house we'd dreamed of, tucked away in a Chicago suburb. We were supposed to be building a future together. Or so I thought. Everything began to fracture on a maintenance job in Iowa. Late one evening, my coworker and friend Jared sent me a text. Ran into this downtown last night, figured you should see it. Attached was a photo, a dimly lit cocktail bar, elegant but crowded. In the blurred background stood Fiona, unmistakable even in low light. She was leaning close to a man I didn't recognize, their bodies angled toward each other in a way that left no doubt. That wasn't idle conversation. That was intimacy. I called Jared immediately, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached, trying to keep my voice steady as the platform beneath me swayed with the wind. "How long have you known?" I asked. There was a pause, heavy and uncomfortable. "I've seen them together twice now," he finally admitted. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you. I'm sorry, man." The next 3 days were hell. Company policy meant I couldn't leave the site unless there was a medical emergency. So I buried myself in the work, checking bolts, inspecting blades, running diagnostics with surgical precision. My personal life was in free fall, but my hands never trembled. When I finally drove back home, Fiona's car was parked in its usual spot. I sat in the driveway for 10 long minutes, breathing slow, weighing my options. I only had that one photo, not enough proof. If I confronted her too soon, she'd deny it. I needed more. I walked in carrying my duffel, masking my turmoil. Fiona met me at the door with a hug and a kiss, her smile flawless, her voice warm and light. She smelled different, perfume I'd never bought her. "How was the trip?" she asked, taking my bag as if everything was normal. "Eye-opening," I said carefully. "Learned a few unexpected things." That night, she slept easily. I didn't close my eyes once. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan's slow rotation, knowing what I had to do. Tomorrow, I would uncover everything. After 10 years of marriage, I at least deserved the truth. The next morning, before she stirred, I reached for her phone. We'd always shared passwords. Part of what I thought was trust. The guilt of snooping lasted only seconds. Then I opened her messages. There he was, saved under the name L-Wire Project. I scrolled through months of texts, playful at first, then explicit. 4 months of lies, arrangements for hotels, careful notes about how to keep me in the dark. One message stopped me cold. A photo of Fiona wearing lingerie I had given her for our anniversary. "Making sure it fits for our weekend," she'd written. His reply, "Can't wait to take it off you." My stomach turned, but my hands were steady as I captured screenshots and sent them to my own phone. Then I placed hers back exactly where I found it. every detail unchanged. When she came downstairs half an hour later, I was already seated at the kitchen table, coffee steaming in front of me, pretending I hadn't just witnessed the unraveling of our life. "Morning, babe," she said breezily, kissing the top of my head. "You're up early." I smiled faintly. "Work called. They want me in North Dakota tomorrow. Turbines are acting up again." It was a lie. I needed time to plan. For a fraction of a second, something flickered across her face. Was it relief? She smoothed it over instantly. "Again? You just got back," she said, feigning mild protest. "That's the job," I answered evenly. "Good thing we installed those security cameras last month. I'll be able to check in on the house while I'm gone." There were no security cameras. I watched her reaction carefully as the bluff landed, her coffee cup pausing midway to her lips. "Of course," she said finally, her voice perfectly neutral. "That's good to know." After clearing the breakfast dishes, I grabbed my phone and cashed in an old favor with my supervisor, convincing him to reassign me to a field job up in North Dakota. Next, I contacted a private investigator recommended by a colleague who'd endured something similar in his own marriage. The investigator, Marcus, a former detective with decades on the force, agreed to keep an eye on things while I was out of town. "Give me everything you've got on whoever you think it is," Marcus said when we met later that afternoon. I handed over a photo Jared had sent me and the license plate number I'd traced from one of Fiona's recurring trips to an apartment complex across the city. "Logan Davidson," Marcus confirmed after running the plate. "Works at City Trust Bank downtown, married, no kids. A married man." Somehow that made the whole thing feel even dirtier. That evening, while I packed for the trip, Fiona was uncharacteristically warm. She even suggested dinner at my favorite steakhouse. Over dinner, she reached across the table and threaded her fingers through mine. "I'm going to miss you," she whispered, locking eyes with me. "Be careful up there." All I could think about was whether she was texting Logan beneath the table, already lining up plans for when I was gone. The thought made me press the knife harder as I cut into my steak. "Always am," I said evenly. "Plenty to come home to." Fiona smiled, oblivious to the fact that our marriage was already free-falling, like someone tumbling from a turbine with no safety line to break the drop. The only question now was how bad the impact would be. 6 months earlier, I'd been warned about her, advice I had stubbornly ignored. While on a maintenance job in Colorado, my coworker Vince had quietly pulled me aside. "I don't know how to put this," Vince said, worry etched deep into his weathered face. "But I saw your wife at the Lakeside Hotel bar last weekend. She was with some guy. Looked close." I brushed it off immediately. "Couldn't have been her," I said. "Fiona was visiting her sister in Milwaukee that weekend." Vince had just shrugged. "Maybe she's got a twin you never mentioned. Figured you should hear it from me." That exchange replayed in my head months later as I drove toward North Dakota. I'd never confronted Fiona about it. Instead, I convinced myself Vince was mistaken, or worse, stirring up drama. Deep down, I simply hadn't wanted to admit he might be right. 3 days into the new assignment, Marcus called with an update, complete with photographs and a detailed report. The day after I left, Fiona had picked Logan up from his office downtown. They drove straight to my house, our house, and stayed there 6 hours before going out for dinner. Marcus's photos showed them kissing in the driveway, Logan's hand resting comfortably on her hip. I had to pull into a rest stop. I couldn't see the road through the red haze flooding my vision. The level of disrespect was staggering, bringing him into my home, probably even into our bed. I slammed my fists into the steering wheel until they bruised, then leaned back, forcing slow breaths. When my head cleared, I took immediate action. I called the bank and moved half of our joint savings into an account under my name only. Then I phoned our financial advisor. "Good timing," Julian said. "I was about to call you. Fiona tried to access your retirement funds yesterday, claimed you were consolidating everything." A chill went through me. "I never authorized that," I said flatly. "Already locked it all down," Julian replied. "Takes both signatures anyway, but maybe you two should coordinate?" We already were, I thought grimly, just not in the same way. Later that night, Marcus called again. "There's more," he said quietly. Your wife went into your home office. She was photographing documents, looked like account statements, routing numbers, the works. I thanked him and hung up, a darker anger settling in my chest. This wasn't only betrayal. This was calculated. Fiona and Logan weren't just sneaking around, they were plotting something bigger. I spent the rest of the night putting my own measures in place, calling in favors, freezing access, setting traps. By sunrise, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I checked out of the hotel without telling anyone and began the long drive back, unannounced. Sometimes the best defense is striking first, and Fiona had no idea what was coming. With every mile that passed, my resolve hardened. The man driving back to Chicago wasn't the same man who had left. That man had been blindsided. This one wouldn't be. 2 days ahead of schedule, I pulled into my neighborhood and parked a block from the house. Moving quietly on foot, I spotted Fiona's car in the driveway, parked next to an unfamiliar Audi. Logan's, no doubt. Perfect. Instead of heading home, I veered off toward our neighbor Walt's property. Walt, a retired Marine with a tough shell and a surprising soft spot for me, had never disguised the fact that he preferred my company over that of my wife, Fiona. Julian? I figured you were out of town, he said, eyebrows rising when he saw me at his door. I need a favor, I said quietly. Mind if I cut across your yard? Maybe spend a little time on your deck? He studied me for a long second, his sharp gaze putting pieces together before I had to say anything. Spotted a strange car parked at your place yesterday, Walt muttered. This about that? From Walt's elevated deck, there was no avoiding the truth. Through the open curtains of my own bedroom, Fiona and Logan, our so-called friend, were sprawled out in bed, sipping one of my rare bourbons like it was theirs. My stomach churned, but my hands didn't tremble as I lifted my phone and took the photos I needed. Minutes later, I sent a message to Marcus, coffee shop, now. When he arrived, I pushed an envelope across the table toward him. Final payment, I said evenly, plus a bonus. You did more than I asked. Marcus gave a curt nod. What's next for you? Information, I told him. I need to know what they're planning before I move. I returned to Walt's afterward. He didn't hesitate. Guest room's yours, he said. Stay as long as you need to figure this out. That night, I called in a favor from an old contact in cybersecurity. By sundown, I had full access to Fiona's email and cloud backups. What I found left no room for denial. They'd been plotting this for months, Fiona and Logan trading messages about draining me dry, laughing at how oblivious I was, detailing every step of a plan to strip me of everything I owned. One file, chillingly titled Exit Strategy, laid out how Fiona could squeeze every last cent from a divorce. But the worst was an audio file. Fiona had been secretly recording our arguments, poking at me, baiting me, hoping I'd snap and say something she could twist into a threat. In one clip, recorded days before my last trip, she kept prodding until I finally shouted back. The moment I left the room, Logan's voice came through, smug and calculated. Perfect. If he ever lays a hand on you, even better. Your lawyer will gut him. A cold weight settled in my chest. This wasn't an affair. It was an ambush, a war they thought I wouldn't see coming. The next morning, I set up a meeting with the fiercest divorce attorney in Chicago, a litigator known for dismantling cases built on infidelity and financial deceit. Then I called my boss. Need another week off, I said flatly. Family emergency. Everything okay? He asked. Not yet, I replied, forcing a calm tone, but it will be. For 3 days I became a ghost. From Walt's guest room, I tracked Fiona and Logan's movements, gathering evidence piece by piece. Walt never pried, but he quietly became my ally. Another delivery for your wife, he said one afternoon. Champagne this time. Looks like they're celebrating. Probably their future, I muttered. Fiona still believed I was hundreds of miles away in North Dakota. She called me every day, feeding me smooth, practiced lies, errands, visits to her mother, late nights with friends. I lied right back, talking about turbine repairs and weather delays. Neither of us broke character. On the 4th day, my attorney Jessica Mills called. Your accounts and retirement funds are secure, she said. The evidence you've provided, adultery, financial misconduct, gives us leverage. What about the house? I asked. The same house where Logan now slept in my bed. With proof she brought her lover into the marital home, we can push for favorable terms, Jessica explained. She hesitated. There's more. I braced myself. Fiona has already consulted 3 attorneys. One of them is Thomas Brenner. The name landed like a gut punch. Brenner was infamous, cutthroat, merciless, and worth every penny of his astronomical fees. She hasn't retained him yet, Jessica added, but she's clearly looking for the sharpest blade she can find. The picture crystallized. Fiona planned to hit me with divorce papers the second I walked through that door, a perfect trap. That evening, Walt knocked on my door. They're loading boxes into his car, he said quietly. Electronics, maybe artwork. I was across the street in seconds, crouched behind a hedge, watching as Logan's Audi filled with my belongings. Home theater equipment, Fiona's jewelry, even what looked like my fireproof safe. When they left, I slipped into my own house like a shadow. The air felt foreign, furniture rearranged, wedding photos gone, replaced with generic artwork. My existence scrubbed away. In the bedroom, Logan's clothes now filled my side of the closet. Anger burned cold as I photographed everything. Then I replaced the missing safe with a duplicate, one carefully packed with documents I had chosen for them to find. I had everything lined up, the bank statements showing each transfer to the new accounts, the meticulous evidence I'd gathered over weeks, and a formal letter from my attorney outlining the criminal and civil consequences of theft and financial fraud in a divorce. Every document was ready. I went back to Walt's place and settled in to wait. From the window, binoculars pressed to my face, I watched the hours crawl by. Eventually, Fiona and Logan stumbled into view, weaving drunkenly up my driveway, laughing, carefree, oblivious to what was coming. Tomorrow, I thought, watching them vanish inside. Tomorrow, everything turns. The next morning, I met with a former client, someone who'd since started a private security firm. I need round-the-clock surveillance inside my house, I said, keeping my words deliberate. Full recording capability, everything documented and above board. By noon, I'd secured a court order allowing me to monitor my own property, citing ongoing theft and misappropriation of assets. By mid-afternoon, technicians were quietly installing hidden cameras in the major rooms while Fiona was away at work. Later that day, I drove downtown to a high-security storage facility, converting a significant chunk of our liquid holdings into physical gold and silver. The heft of the metal in my hands felt immutable, beyond the reach of hackers or wire fraud. This will be stored in a private vault registered solely to you, Mr. Brandt, the facility manager explained. Access requires biometric verification. I signed the paperwork. He handed me a small encrypted USB device. The vault's location is coded into this, he added. Without both the drive and your fingerprint, the vault might as well not exist. That night I came back to Walt's. He was out on the porch, oiling a shotgun. Expecting trouble? I asked, lowering myself into the chair beside him. Best to stay ready, Walt said, flashing a grim smile. My gaze lingered on the guns. Logan having access to weapons was a complication I hadn't fully considered, one that added a sharper edge to everything. Got something for you, Walt said suddenly. He handed me a compact device. Military-grade recorder, he explained. Undetectable. Beats the hell out of a phone for what you're doing. I accepted it with a nod of genuine gratitude. Thanks, Walt, for all of this. A man's got to defend what's his, Walt said simply, or make damn sure nobody else takes it. That night, an alert from the surveillance system woke me. I checked the feed. On screen, Fiona and Logan were tearing through my office, desperate to open the safe I'd already replaced. When Fiona finally pried it open, she didn't find financial documents, only the letter from my lawyer. The shock on her face said everything. Logan's expression hardened into rage as he read. He slammed the safe shut and cursed violently. I watched from the glow of the screen, grim satisfaction tightening in my chest. Their carefully built conspiracy was collapsing. They'd mistaken me for a fool, for the trusting husband too blind to see betrayal until it was too late. But what they'd awakened was something else entirely. A man stripped down to his last defenses, with nothing left to lose and everything still left to protect. Tomorrow, I vowed to myself. Tomorrow I walk back into that house and finish this. The morning of my return, I dressed with deliberate precision, charcoal suit, a bold tie, cufflinks Fiona had given me on our 5th anniversary. Once they'd meant devotion, today they were armor. Before leaving Walt's, I checked my phone. 5 missed calls from Fiona. The surveillance feed had already shown her frantically searching the house, calling Logan, scrambling to reach her lawyers. "You sure you want to do this alone?" Walt asked, watching me shoulder my bag. "I can come with?" I shook my head. "This is between me and her, but thanks." "Recorders on?" I tapped my pocket where the device rested. Always. Crossing the street felt unreal, like walking onto a battlefield with enemy eyes on me. Fiona appeared in the doorway as I pulled into the driveway, her expression smoothed into perfect composure, a mask that didn't match the chaos I'd seen on the cameras just hours earlier. "Julian, you're home early," she said brightly, stepping toward me with open arms. I sidestepped her embrace and walked inside. The house already felt foreign. Logan's presence was everywhere. His jacket on the rack, his beer in the fridge, the faint trace of his cologne in the air. "We need to talk," I said, setting my bag on the living room floor. Her smile flickered but held. "Of course. Let me make you coffee. You must be exhausted from the drive." "I'm fine." My voice was calm. "Sit down, Fiona." She perched at the edge of the sofa, nerves barely hidden. "Is something wrong? You sound serious." I studied her face. The woman I'd once loved felt like a stranger, an accomplice in my own undoing. "I know about Logan," I said quietly. My voice was even, unshakable. Fiona's eyelids fluttered, her blinks so rapid they looked rehearsed rather than natural. For a split second, raw fear flickered in her eyes, gone in an instant, replaced by an imitation of confusion she must have practiced in the mirror. It wasn't convincing. "Logan? I don't understand what you're talking about." "Artificial intelligence, the tech guy," I said. "The man who's been warming my bed when I'm gone, drinking my bourbon, and scheming with you to strip me of everything in the divorce." The color bled from her face, draining her cheeks white, but just as quickly she snapped back, feigning composure. "That's ridiculous. I have no clue what you're insinuating." "Enough." I raised a hand, cutting her off. "No more games. I've got it all. Photos, recordings, call logs, every email you sent about funneling money out of my accounts." Her act crumbled. The mask of innocence slipped. "You were spying on me?" she hissed, voice low and venomous. "That's illegal!" "Not when it's in my house, my accounts. My wife plotting fraud against me," I answered coolly. Instantly, she pivoted. Tears welled up. Fake, but masterfully delivered to anyone who didn't know her like I did. "Julian, please," she whispered, voice trembling. "Whatever you think you know, we can work through it. We've been together too long to throw this away." For half a heartbeat, I almost admired the act. Almost. "There's nothing left to work through," I said, voice like ice. "The day you chose betrayal, with Logan and with every dollar you tried to steal, that's the day this marriage ended." Fiona shot up from the couch, tears gone in a blink. Fury replaced them, sharp and unfiltered. "You don't know what I'm capable of," she spat. "You think you're clever, digging around like some wannabe detective? You won't win." "I already have," I said evenly. "The filing went through this morning. My lawyer's handling it. The judge has already frozen every account you touched." A sharp crack split the air, the vase against the wall, shattering into a spray of glass shards across the hardwood. "Get out!" she screamed. I didn't flinch. "No, Fiona, this time you're the one leaving." The next day turned our house into a cold war zone. Fiona refused to go. She barricaded herself in the guest room, alternating between whispered threats and crocodile tears. "You'll regret this," she hissed over breakfast, eyes hard as stone. "When I'm through, you won't have a dime." I sipped my coffee, unbothered. Hard to pull off when I've got your fraud on tape. By the time the doorbell rang mid-afternoon, I knew what to expect. Standing on the porch was Thomas Brenner, Fiona's divorce lawyer, a man whose smirk usually screamed arrogance, though right now it faltered when I greeted him by name. "Mr. Brandt," he said, voice formal, "I'm representing your wife in these proceedings." "Perfect timing," I replied, stepping aside. "Mine already filed this morning." Fiona was waiting in the living room, posture stiff, face carefully neutral, a mask of calm she clearly didn't feel. Brenner joined her, opened his briefcase, and began stacking papers neatly on the table. "We've prepared a settlement proposal," he said smoothly. "More than fair, given the situation." I laughed, sharp, involuntary. "Before you pitch it," I said, leaning back, "you should know I've got ironclad evidence. Fraud, asset theft, adultery. All documented right here in the marital home." Brenner didn't flinch outwardly, but I saw his knuckles tighten on the pen. "Allegations need evidence, Mr. Brandt," he said cautiously. "I've got evidence," I countered, sliding a thumb drive across the table. "Emails, photos, recordings. My attorney already has copies, backed up in multiple places." Fiona went pale. "You're bluffing." I looked at her, dead calm. "Want me to play the recording of you and Logan plotting how to drain my retirement accounts? Or maybe the one where you walk him through hiding the assets offshore?" I turned to Brenner. "As an officer of the court, continuing with fraudulent claims after seeing this? That's malpractice." Brenner plugged in the drive. Each file he opened stripped another layer of confidence from his expression. By the time he closed the laptop, he wasn't smirking anymore. He leaned toward Fiona, murmured something low. They whispered for several tense minutes. When they turned back, his tone was different, subdued. "My client is prepared to discuss alternate terms," he said quietly. "I'll save you the trouble," I replied. "She leaves today. She takes her personal belongings and nothing else. Everything else goes to the court, including her little scheme with Logan Davidson." Fiona shot up, fury twisting her face. "You can't just throw me out. I need time." "To move more money? Forge more evidence? Not happening." I cut her off sharply. "You've got until 5 o'clock. After that it's trespassing, and I'll add breaking and entering to the complaint." Her voice cracked as she slipped into the role of the wounded wife, trembling for effect. "You'd really throw away 10 years of marriage like this?" I held her gaze, unflinching. "I didn't throw it away, Fiona, you did. The second you begged for an open marriage last month, I knew it was just cover. You'd already betrayed me, and you know what? An open marriage won't fix this. There's nothing left to mend. You're free to pursue whoever's been waiting on the sidelines." Her composure cracked. "Julian, please." 5 o'clock, I said flatly, already walking toward the door. By 4:30, Fiona was gone. She only packed her clothes and essentials, Walt silently witnessing the exodus. No one spoke, not a word, just the rasp of zippers, the muted rumble of wheels across hardwood, and the sharp report of a car door echoing into stillness. The house felt empty but lighter somehow. That night, Jared called. "Heard the news. You holding up?" "I'm managing," I muttered, bourbon in hand on the back deck. "Should have listened to you a long time ago." "Don't beat yourself up," he replied. "You trusted her. That's what marriage is supposed to be." The following weeks blurred into a grind of legal documents and strained meetings with attorneys. Fiona resisted the divorce at first, but her stance collapsed when Logan's wife unearthed their affair and filed for divorce herself, citing Fiona directly. When Logan's own marriage imploded, he discarded her without ceremony. Mutual friends whispered that he'd accused Fiona of misleading him, just another lie in his endless rotation. Then on a bleak Tuesday afternoon, my lawyer called. "She wants to meet," Jessica said. "Just you and her, no attorneys. Says it's important." Every instinct screamed to decline, but curiosity drowned out caution. We settled on a quiet coffee shop downtown. Fiona arrived immaculate, hands locked around a steaming mug. "Thanks for coming," she began softly. "I owe you an apology." I said nothing. "What I did, it was unforgivable," she admitted. "Logan bailed the moment things got hard. Everything you warned me about turned out to be true." So what's this about? I asked evenly. You need cash now that your backup plan's gone? She winced. I deserve that. But no, I'm leaving Chicago once the divorce is final, starting over somewhere else. She slid a folder toward me. Inside were settlement papers, signed, agreeing to my original terms. No extras, no alimony, nothing beyond the bare legal minimum. Why now? I asked, suspicious of the sudden surrender. She dropped her gaze. Logan wasn't the first. There were others. For years. You never deserved any of it. The confession should have devastated me, but instead, it brought clarity. The woman I thought I loved had never really existed. I hope you find whatever you're looking for, I said, standing to leave. Fiona reached for my hand. How did you know? When did you start suspecting? I gently pulled away. When you stopped looking at me like I mattered. Everything else was just confirmation. Walking out of that cafe, I felt nothing. No anger, no longing, no sorrow, just a peculiar weightlessness and the quiet exhilaration of an unwritten future. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Fiona disappeared from Chicago, rumored to have moved to Florida without so much as a goodbye. Logan's divorce dragged on. His wife, wiser from my ordeal, armed herself with evidence, affairs, finances, everything. His downfall was only a matter of time. I threw myself into work. The toughest turbine repairs, perched high above the ground where the wind was sharp and the problems were simple, became my refuge. The physical strain left no room to dwell on the past. On the anniversary of uncovering Fiona's betrayal, Jared and Walt hosted a small cookout on Walt's deck. To new beginnings, Jared said, raising his beer. And to clearer views from higher ground, Walt added with a knowing nod. As the sun slipped low, Walt handed me a small wooden box. Made this for you, he murmured, from the old deck boards we replaced last summer. Inside rested a polished compass, its needle steady despite all it had endured. Figured you could use it, Walt said, for wherever you head next. The very next morning, my supervisor called. A massive wind farm project in Colorado needed a lead technician, 2-year contract, substantial pay increase. A door to something greater. You're exactly who we need, he said. But taking this means leaving everything behind. I'll need your answer before the week is out. His words followed me as I wandered through the house, a place I once thought would frame every piece of my life. Even now, reclaimed as mine alone, the walls still echoed with memories I couldn't quiet. On the coffee table, a brass compass rested silently. Its needle, once fixed on the past, now trembled toward possibilities I'd never dared to chase. When I told Walt about the offer, he didn't even pause to think. So when do we list the house? I laughed. You think I should actually do it? Kid, he said, you've never been one to stay grounded. Climbing higher, it's who you are. He wasn't wrong. The same instincts that steadied me on turbine towers had shaped my whole life, holding firm when the wind howled, bracing myself before each step into the unknown, trusting my own strength even when the ground seemed impossibly far away. 2 months later, I stood atop my first turbine in Colorado. The mountains stretched out endlessly beneath a cloudless sky. The air was thinner up here, yet I could breathe more freely than I had in years. Some might say I was running from the past, but I knew the truth. I was ascending beyond it, finding a height where everything below came into perfect, unmistakable focus.